Hello, my name is Anna. I'm a medical doctor and a rheumatologist fellow in Denmark. In this 2025 RheumaVision video, I will share how you can easily classify calcium pyrophosphate crystal deposition disease using a rapid 4-step flowchart. But first, I'd like you to meet John. So, unfortunately, John is discharged with a wrong diagnosis. But the doctor on call in the emergency room that night was not alone in being confused. Calcium crystals was not discovered until 1962, and given the similarity with gout, the clinical presentation was initially called pseudogout. Joint forces from the American College of Rheumatology and the European Alliance of Association for Rheumatology have now published the 2023 CPPD classification criteria, which was published in Annals of Rheumatic Diseases. The classification criteria is not to be confused with the diagnostic criteria, which are often more heterogeneous. So we'll now go through the rapid 4-step flowchart to identify people with CPPD disease and discriminate them from people who does not have CPPD disease. The entry criterion, which is the first step, is identifying people who have joint pain, swelling or tenderness. If this is not present, you do not have CPPD. If this is present, you move on to the second step in the flowchart. Secondly, we want to assess whether the symptoms are likely explained by any other condition. If this is the case, then the patient does not have CPPD disease. If this is not the case, we move on to assessment number 3. If the patient has Crown-Dense syndrome or calcium pyrophosphate crystals in the synovial fluid, well, then the patient has CPPD. If not, we move on to the 4th step of the flowchart, which is a scoring system. If the patient has 56 points or below, the patient does not have CPPD disease. But having above this score, well, then the patient has CPPD. So I guess by now you're wondering, does John have CPPD? Placing John in the flowchart, we will likely diagnose him with CPPD given the rhomboid-shaped crystals. But in the case of John, we only had a description of morphology, and even though calcium pyrophosphate crystals are indeed rhomboid-shaped, other crystals are as well. So in order to do a proper assessment, we need to also look at the size and the birefringence of the crystals. Calcium pyrophosphate crystals are 1 to 20 micrometers, and while this is difficult eyeballing, what we often do is identifying red blood cells in the synovial fluid, which we know to have a diameter of 7 micrometers. We also know that calcium pyrophosphate crystals are weakly positively birefringent. So that means staying parallel to the axis of the lambda filter, they will turn blue, while staying perpendicular to the axis, they'll turn yellow. So re-evaluating John's placement in the flowchart, he is now left with the scoring system, which probably requires him to have additional imaging analysis done with either dual energy CT or ultrasound for calcium crystal assessment. So remember, you can classify people as having calcium pyrophosphate crystal deposition disease using a 4-step flowchart, which is available in the Open Access Classification Criteria paper. Thank you for listening. Bye.